Hey, Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. This week, I'm super excited to talk about something that I really like talking about. And it starts with a question like we try to do. And this is a question for you to answer for yourself. And the question really is do your customers love you enough? And I'm like, oh my gosh, at first I'm like, yeah, my customers all love me. And then there was a little bit of a pause. And then I'm like, maybe I should learn a little bit more about this. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Bryan Rutberg. How are you today, sir?
Dave, I'm so happy to be here. I'm doing well. Thanks.
Awesome. So you're the founder of 3C's Communications, and you're located in Seattle. Yes. So first question I couldn't understand, or what are the 3C's? What C's should we be talking about here today?
Some might accuse me of being a little too clever, but there's a few different 3C's, right? Uh-oh. When I started the company, and it was really more of a focus on communications per se, and this all still applies. Create your message. That's important. You got to know what you want to say. Communicate it well. Choose the right vehicles and get it out there. But most importantly, make a connection with your audience. Create, communicate, connect.
Okay.
Over time, as I've woven in more of what I do and I've figured out what it is my clients are really after, some people want to be better communicators, but everybody wants to sell more and serve their customers more effectively. And really 3C has become the customer connection company. So I help people answer the question in the affirmative. Do your customers love you enough? My aim is for my clients to be able to say, yeah, they actually do.
So it's 6 C's. I mean, we need to change the name here, Bryan. I think it's 6 C's now.
Well, if you want to shoot the moon, Dave, let's go for 9, because
there's 3 more.
What makes your customers love you enough? Well, you do have to have the right communications. You need to have some creative programs, and they kind of run the gamut. And I've got experience helping clients do things like set up customer advisory councils or NPS surveys or customer loyalty programs, communications, creative programs, and you've got to have the right culture, right? The quick conversation we had before we went live today about the connection between employee love and customer love. You got to have the right culture to be able to hear your customers and actually use that information the way you run your business.
Wow, that's awesome. So there's a
lot of C's for you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton here. So thanks again for hanging out with us. I think that the first place that I wanted to start was asking you about, I saw on your website about the lifetime value of a customer. So if we look at a customer, we want to create a message, and the message is obviously custom for everybody that, has their own business. But the part of it is most of us are not really looking for a one and done type of situation. We enjoy, the lifetime, the repeatability of it, whatever the words are. So, I always was curious, and this is probably more for me than anybody listening, is there like a simple formula to understand what the lifetime value of a customer is?
There's a simple version, and then you can complicate it. But
I'm the simple guy, so let's do the simple version, okay?
The simple one is for a given customer, and then you complicate it by thinking about aggregates and such. For a single customer, what do they spend when they buy from you? How often do they buy from you? Okay. And how long do they stay a customer? And you just do a quick bit of math there. If I spend $100 with you and you're able to keep me as a customer through 12 transactions that last for 12 transactions a year that last for 3 years, there's 36 transactions at $100. Who knows what causes me to move on to something else? Maybe it's I was buying diapers from you and the kid outgrew them, or maybe we just decided it wasn't, I found a better supplier or a different supplier. But that 3 times that 100 times 12 times 3 gets you $3,600. That would have been my customer lifetime value to you.
Gotcha. So what does an entrepreneur do with that? Because I get the formula, but it's like there's so many unknowns in that if you're a B2B type situation. maybe you're cyclical. I mean, there's obviously a ton of things. Is that where the more complicated version comes in then?
For sure. If you're looking at customer lifetime value, first of all, you realize that gives you three different levers that you can push and pull. Can I get people to spend more? Can I get people to spend more often? Can I get people to stay customers longer? And that's, of course, where building some love comes in. When you're looking at it as an entrepreneur and trying to figure out how you compare one customer to another, that gives you a nice baseline.
Okay.
You may wish as well to look at what's happening in, say, my top quartile of customers versus my bottom quartile of customers. You might ask questions about what does it cost me to sell to and service these customers, and start thinking about profitability more so than the revenue that you get from a customer. So those things are the things that I encourage my clients to think about. How do you stratify? How do you find the right levers to move the end number, the one on the right side of the equal sign? And how do you properly assess for your business? And as you suggested, this is going to be different for B2B versus B2C, whether you're a two-tier distribution model or you're working through resellers or the technology space, ISVs and resellers. It can get pretty complicated pretty quickly.
Gotcha.
But you've got the basics.
So when you have that information, I'm just curious, let's say that you have that $3,600 for the super simple, scenario that you laid out. How does an entrepreneur take that then and do something with it? Because I see a lot of times we have information for information purposes, which, how do you take and turn that into something that either, I can repeat or it helps me dial in my business? I'm just curious what you do with that $3,600 number once you've achieved it.
I spent some time talking to trusted customers, the ones already like you and have stuck with you for a while, and ask the penetrating questions like, what are you, why do you buy these things from us? How are we helping you or your business, depending upon B2C or B2B? Sure. And why is it that you stick with us? What do we do that makes you feel good about the choice you've made in terms of a vendor? In order to influence the numbers, you want to keep your customers longer? Maybe a loyalty program is going to get folks to think twice before they move on. Certainly, increasing the service that you provide throughout the lifetime of that customer has an opportunity. I do a lot of work with technology companies. So this is where things like customer support lines or onboarding practices have a lot to do with it. You also think about what else do we do or sell that can increase the size of the average order, right? If, you bought the blue one, you should really think about the red one too. Gotcha. Right? Or you bought the slacks, don't you want the jacket? And figure out, it's just upsell and cross-sell, but you add all those things together and suddenly you've got your thing to move the needle. And the information that starts out being for information's sake starts to guide your hand as you plan your strategic and tactical responses.
Wow, that's great. And I tell you, upsell and cross-sell, Bryan, seem to be like common sense to a lot of people, but there's a lot of business owners that, boy, they just forget that piece. It's 7 to 8 times easier to sell something to an existing customer than it is to go find a new one. So in looking at that, it's like, man, sell them whatever you can as often as you can. Why does that miss? Why are so many people? Why is that a blind spot for so many people?
We're talking about entrepreneurs primarily here, right? Yeah. And think about when you started your company years ago. You get very caught up in how do I get that next sale? Sure. And when I'm working with global organizations, they've figured these things out. But when working with a company that's successfully scaling, sometimes the best question I can ask is, what are you doing to continue selling to your existing customers? And the answer I frequently learn through just a discovery process is, well, we have a bunch of hunters that make up our sales force. Yeah. And I'll ask the question about, and do you have farmers? Yeah. And the answer inevitably comes back, well, we're trying so hard to win new business. We haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about the old guys. And I think it really is, you use the phrase, it is a blind spot. You get so used to chasing the next big deal that you forget you've got this gold mine of folks who already have voted with their wallets to say, yeah, I like you. I want to do business with you.
Wow, what a great piece of advice as we start this off today. I mean, if you're listening and you want to grow your sales, I always suggest to people before you go and look for new customers, make sure that you've mined your existing customers 100%. You know, I had a business in the past. We talked about it before we jumped online, and we sold construction products. And it was amazing that people would come into our place and they would want to buy one product. And then they looked at another product and said, oh my gosh, I didn't know you sold that. I just bought X. And it was like, oh, what a painful feeling. So, if you're listening, take a look at your customer list and make sure that they are buying all of your products that you possibly can sell them. It's seems like I said, Bryan, it seems so simple, but like you said, we as entrepreneurs are always looking at that next piece. We're always looking for that next sale. We're always looking for that next new business opportunity rather than thinking in the past. So,
and consider too, when you take care with your existing customer base and they continue to buy from you because you find the new opportunities, the thing that now they haven't bought from somewhere else that they decide to buy from you, or they come to you first to find out, do you offer this? And it gives you the opportunity to shape your business to serve them. Knowing that it costs more to sell to new customers than it does to sell to your existing customers. Right. What's one great way to reduce the cost of acquiring new business?
Yeah.
Referrals, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you can get your existing customer base to say nice things about you to other people in the business who will then come to you and get involved in a conversation, you've probably shortened your sales cycle.
Yeah.
There's evidence that a customer who's been referred to you and chosen to work with you actually, let's go back to the customer lifetime value equation, stays with you longer. There's greater retention of customers who've been referred in because maybe you slip up. They're the ones who know someone else has had a good relationship and are willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. Or they just invest more heavily emotionally in you because they know that a friend sent them to you. And suddenly you just keep them around for longer. So you're helping yourself on both ends of the spectrum, new and old customers, when you are great to your existing customers.
Yeah, and then the clients that I work with, when we talk about their sales process and try and do a little training on the sales end, it's crazy how many people, Bryan, think that I can't ask for a referral. I mean, nobody's going to refer me. No, it's like they're right away, they're justifying this. And I found this research and it showed that 91%, so simple math, 9 out of 10 of our customers would refer us if we asked. And the problem is only 11% of us ask. So it means to me that 9 out of 10 would, only 1 out of 10 ask. So that 1 out of 10, they're making some serious bank. I mean, my gosh, like you said, it's who doesn't want to say, oh, I know a guy, and or I know a girl or whatever. And that stuff happens so frequently that if we just wait for it to happen, that's one thing. But man, I'm like, go find somebody that that wants to tell their friends about you or whatever. So I appreciate that you brought up that referrals piece. That's fantastic.
And we see it in our businesses. I came out of a corporate background. I had a 20-year corporate career before I went independent and started doing my own thing in the consulting world. It's a little turned around, but a vendor that I had hired when I was still doing the corporate thing, someone who helped an organization I was with some public relations and some event planning, has remained in contact for a while. In the last 6 months, she's referred me twice because we've maintained a relationship. We grabbed lunches together, things like that. through her referrals, I've got one client that I'm 3 months into a 5-month project now that's medium 5 figures. And just next week, I'm doing my first workshop for another client she is currently serving where she's referred me in. And in both cases, the sales cycle was virtually nil. So my
Right.
cost of selling was virtually nil. The time it took me was virtually nil. And all of a sudden, this one person has been responsible for, like, by the time it all adds up, it'll probably be about 100K worth of business.
Yeah.
Referrals work.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it would be crazy to, sit and literally ask people why they don't do it. And when I have done that in the past, I've gotten so many, reasons. The biggest is fear. But the second biggest is, well, who's going to refer me anyway? And that's where, again, 9 out of 10 of your current customers are going to refer you based on the research, but it is what it is.
Well,
Go ahead.
The research, I mean, the thing hiding behind what you've just shared is entrepreneurs, by and large, and I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but many of us still harbor way more of that imposter syndrome than we should.
Yeah.
We ascribe our success to luck, and we tend to forget the hard work we've put in. And even more, we tend to forget, because we take it for granted because we're so close to it. We forget how much goodness we carry around in our own brains.
Yeah.
And if we've been moved and motivated by a topic, as you've been, about the connection between personal values and the way you run your business, and I've been about getting customer relationships and employee relationships to spike, you take for granted, oh, everybody knows that. And you don't realize just how unique you are and how special it is for someone to get a chance to meet you and hear from you. And it's that feeling like, oh, I did some good there, and I know something that the world needs to hear, that leads you to be able to say confidently, I'd really love if you tell others about me.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking about the imposter syndrome that I went through for my book. How many people do you think listening, Bryan, have a great idea? They're destined to write a book. They're destined to be on a podcast, start a podcast. They're destined to do something, and this imposter syndrome, totally gets in the way. I remember when I was like, I really want to write a book. And that first thought is, dude, you got nothing to say, right? It was the first thing that came into my mind. And I lived with it for a while. And then I'm like, boy, and people were like, you should give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? Blah, 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 And then I remember we invested all the energy and the time, and I got this book in my hand. And then we went live on Cyber Monday. And, all of a sudden it went to Amazon #1 bestseller in 3 different categories. My first thought, Bryan, was, oh my gosh, what did my parents do? Did they just buy a warehouse full of books? I mean, even through the thing, I'm just fighting this imposter syndrome. So I call my dad. I'm like, dude, did you just buy a bunch of books? He's like, no, what are you talking about? He bought 12 when it was all said and done. And my mom, I had to buy her one. She didn't even buy one for herself. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, whoa, so what happened? I mean, I couldn't grapple or deal with the fact that somebody actually wanted to hear what I had to say. So I completely can understand your imposter syndrome, which basically leads to the fact that we don't think we're good enough. That's why we don't want to ask for the referral. So get that out of your mind. You are good enough, and you have something to offer people, and go ask them for it,
Well, maybe you had a similar experience to mine. I mean, a few times in my life, I've been given the gift of someone telling me how they saw me. On a few occasions, it's come about because I've admitted to imposter syndrome and actually shared that, it feels like I've just sort of lucked into a few things. And I've had one gentleman who was doing some consulting work for 3C, recently a business development coach and consultant that I've been working with, who went out and actually talked to former clients of mine, me not on the line, and recorded the conversations, gave me transcripts that, made me smack my head. And then on one occasion, my fantastic wife of going on 29 years now, who just said, no, wait a minute, here's how I see your story.
Yeah.
And if we can get comfortable sharing where our self-doubt comes from,
Right.
and either inviting, or people sometimes just feel, if you've shared your self-doubt, telling you why you're wrong,
Yeah.
that's a powerful,
Yeah, it
powerful
is.
gift. And I don't know how many copies of the book you've sold overall, but every one of those people who's voted with their wallet has told you, you've got something to offer me.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
pretty powerful.
Well, and it was even weirder when I'm writing the book, I find out that 99% of the books, or 98% of the books ever published, sell less than 100 copies. So
Wow.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, now I'm like, oh, this is going to be me. I'm investing all this energy and nobody's going to buy it. So it's crazy. I mean, especially as entrepreneurs, we end up kind of we're out by ourselves a lot of times. And actually, I wanted to kind of bring up this mastermind group that you're talking about starting, because what a great place for people to come for like-minded, come for encouragement, come and say, you know what, I'm having a trouble with my imposter syndrome or whatever. So why don't you fill us in on what you're doing with your mastermind group coming up?
Thank you for that entree into the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that I've been in business for about 7 years, I've obviously managed to serve a number of clients and build some strong relationships. And the folks who regularly come back to me, just, can I get an hour? I just want to run something by you.
Yeah.
I have developed a fair degree of confidence in what I know, but I've developed even more confidence in the power of the crowd. Sure. To pull together an answer that's better than any single person's answer to any challenge someone might face. So for those folks who take this love angle, how do you build more love in the relationships? How do you build more connection in relationships, and take it into their sales efforts, their marketing efforts, and their customer support, customer success efforts? It's valuable to have a group of like-minded practitioners to bounce things off of.
Right.
So that's what we're building. We're calling it the Customer Connection Roundtable.
Good.
And it's for professionals mid-career in the corporate world, or business owners, or senior members of leadership teams who have the instinct that I can get more out of this business if I give more to the people that I serve. And if I take the mission of my business seriously and make it not just about, follow your mission, show the love, and the profit's going to follow. This ebook that I imagine we'll also discuss is called Love and Profit. Okay. Right. And those two things, pretty powerful forces in humanity. Yeah. For people who understand the connection, or want to understand more deeply the connection, this Customer Connection Roundtable group that's going to kick off in April, and people would be welcome to join at any time. It's going to get folks together who want to share their ideas, get peer feedback, share their challenges. Sure. And have an opportunity with a professional communicator like me and my colleagues at 3C to, I'm working on something and I want to bounce it off you. It's an idea, or I've got a PowerPoint deck for this presentation, I'd like to show it to you, or I'm writing an email that's going to go out. Can I run some copy by you? Sure. This is a way to bring people together for that kind of like-minded connection and help everybody become a stronger practitioner.
That's perfect. And, if you're listening and that's of interest to you, we'll let you know at the end of the show how to connect with Bryan. But I just think it's always good to have, like you said, like-minded people, together. It sure is a safe place as you, build your business. It's like, kind of like a board of directors without having to have a board of directors, sitting there. So that's awesome. I want to circle back to what we started with, though, is the customer love. I mean, do your customers love you enough? If I'm an entrepreneur and I got all these things going on in my day and I'm wearing all these hats, I'm just happy that my customers like me. It's like, oh my gosh, like is good enough. You don't got to love me, you'll learn to love me type of thing. But if this is like something now all of a sudden that we talked about it, somebody's like, tell me more about what that looks like. What do you normally tell people if you had to visualize, just describe or paint a picture for somebody on what does the successful customer love look like? What would you share with them as far as a picture?
For sure. We've already touched on some of it. Are you giving me referrals? Do
Okay.
you think enough of the services I provide and the way I, in a business to business world, help you run your business and serve your clients or customers? In the business to consumer world, it's about generating satisfaction in the heart and mind of your ultimate buyer. Is that powerful enough that they're sharing me with others? That's one way.
Sure.
If they're not offering if they're not offering referrals, well, references are good too. Hey, we've had a good relationship for a while, and I'm really excited about the way you're serving your customers better because of the building supplies that I share with you. You run more efficient jobs, and just in time really works for us. Can I do a short case study on you and share it with folks, or can I occasionally ask you to take a call from a prospective customer I'm talking with? Those are a couple of good ways. But there's also, in the world of technology that I came out of from my corporate career, it's who's the customer who's going to say yes to serving on a customer advisory board, or even just doing a one-time shot at a focus group? Who's the customer who's going to sit on a panel discussion, whether it's a virtual online event or whether it's a conference or trade show? One of the gigs I had a while back was working a local technology company that regularly did events that put their senior executives on stage, had a practice of bringing customers and partners on stage with their executives. And they wanted someone who understood business communications and public speaking skills to spend time with these customers and partners before they would get on stage at major events and say things about their relationship with my client. Well, if you can find customers who will go on stage with your executives and say nice things about you in a public forum, that's another great way to say, to know that you're getting the love. So there's, it's all of those things and plenty more. It's really going to be different for each organization.
Absolutely.
But they're out there to be found for sure.
Great. Yeah. And it's interesting because I have to say, on my side, in my world, on a referral side, I give way more referrals than I get. I'm referring my clients all the time to other people. I'm trying to make connections, connecting the dots and different things like that. So, if your customers aren't referring you, I tell you, one of the great ways, and you're uncomfortable asking them, one of the great ways is to actually refer them, show them how it's done. I mean, I've referred millions and millions of dollars back and forth, and it's really comforting and pleasing to see that connection be made. So if you're listening and you don't feel like you have the courage to ask for a referral, then maybe you have the courage to give a referral and find somebody to help, one of your customers, whatever that looks like. So
well, and Dave, think about what you just told me, right? I mean, first of all, when I use a word like love in the context of business, it comes with a lot of baggage. But what is love? I mean, love in the way we normally think of it, it's a two-way street, right? The relationship I have with my wife, the relationship anybody listening may have with a partner, you give and you get. So think about what you've done with those customers for whom you would give referrals. You should be talking with so-and-so because I think you guys might. One is that, have you just now affected that third part of the customer lifetime value equation,
Right.
longevity,
Yep.
retention? Who's
Yep.
going to leave you if you're responsible for their getting more business? And
Right.
of course, knowing that in the business you were in, if you got them more business, chances are they were going to come to you for more
Absolutely.
lumber or concrete or whatever it was you were moving. And sooner or later, folks do get the idea, or it makes it just easier. Hey, thanks for that referral, Dave. I
Right.
appreciate it. And I know you want to return the favor sometime. So please
Yep.
do when you can. And
Yep.
that's a very lightweight way of asking for a referral.
Right.
Please do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the love word, I wrote down putting others first,
Yes.
I put somebody ahead of, it's so odd. We go to some of those networking events and I don't do much of them anymore, but in the past I'd meet somebody, an insurance guy or whatever, pick insurance, and the guy would walk up to me with like a half inch of his cards and he'd give them to me and say, hey, can you hand these out to your friends? And it's like, oh my gosh, I met you just like right now. What is, where in the world would I possibly hand out your card? And it's always weird when the expectation is, I've been with my same insurance guy for X number of years. I'm supposed to drop that relationship and build one with you purely because we met at a networking event. I tell you what, when that happens, my wall goes up, Bryan, and I shut down. Flip it around. And if that guy said, hey, you know what? I just met somebody that really needs what you have. Oh man, my wall comes down, my sensors go up, and I'm like all about that. So I hope that people listening consider giving a referral long before they get one. So I just was curious what your thoughts are.
Oh, well, first of all, you're so right. I mean, literally earlier today, I got one of those notes that we're so used to getting at the pandemic equivalent of the cocktail party is your LinkedIn direct messages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for connecting with me. You think maybe someone has a sincere desire to see what
Yeah.
kind of content you're putting out and learn more about your business. And the first message you get, thanks for connecting with me. Here's what I do for a living. When would be a good time for us to get on the phone and talk about it?
Yeah.
If I had a nickel for every time I've said to someone, I'm really happy with my financial advisor right now,
Yeah.
or I mean, there's just that presumption. But the phrase that you used to kick off that comment of putting others first.
Yeah. Yep.
Many of us have that ethos, right? Those of us who take our faith seriously, those of us who have those sort of human values in our day-to-day interaction. I'm the guy who goes out for a walk with the dog and takes a little bag and picks up trash along the way, or will pick up if someone else has missed seeing their dog make a mess. I'm the guy who picks up the extra mess in their.
Nice.
You take that ethos, and
Yeah.
why do we check it at the door when we show up at the office?
Yeah. That's
Put
crazy.
others first. Think about what it's like to be in that person's shoes. Respond to them in a loving, caring, human way. And guess what? Not only does it generally lead to more business, it generally makes you a happier person. And at this age and stage, you can see the gray hair. I really want to live my values, not just when I shut the door to the office and go home, but 24 hours a day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that really helps the customer, that genuine part of you, Bryan, is way better. I mean, I just did a communications training yesterday, for an association on 10 tips to better communicate. And one of them is that about people understand when you're not authentic. They can kind of see it. They don't feel really comfortable. So if your customers, if you're not being real with them, if you don't love them, let me put it this way. If you don't love them, don't expect them to love you. I mean, I think it's really fair that we have to love them first. They're the ones spending the money. They're the ones that are, the kind of the aggressor, so to speak. They're the ones taking the offense. We're just there on the defense trying to help. So try and love them first before, then they're going to love you back. And I hope that people take that the right way.
When you just hinted at the critical question there in any sales cycle, it's not what can I sell you, it's how can I help?
Yeah.
And if you start from a point of, I may or may not be able to help you, I will be able to help you, even if it's by telling you in the nicest way possible, I'm not the person you want for this engagement.
Yeah.
And I know someone who can help you,
Right.
but how can I help you? It completely puts the other person in a place of comfort as they answer. Well, here's what I really need. Let's not talk about solutions. Let's talk about what I need.
Right.
And then you become partners in crafting the answer.
That's so cool. I love when someone calls me and says, Dave, you know everybody. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, I'm kind of excited, like, okay, but then I'm like, well, I don't know. Okay. So what do you need? Well, I need somebody that does X. Have you ever heard of, having over 100 episodes of podcasting, you meet a bunch of people and you have this plethora of opportunity. And it's like, hey, who do you know that does this? I mean, I think that's when you become that source of a resource, so to speak, for your customer, they can't help but love you. My gosh, I talked to Bryan and he knows this person and, oh man, Bryan, you rock. What else do you do there?
Right.
That's the best part of it. So,
well, the analogy of, I mean, think of the network map, because we even refer to it as a personal network, right? The most valuable nodes on the network are the ones that have the greatest number of connections. So if we become collectors of people and collectors of expertise, we're sought after, and people think of us, even when they know we can't help them directly, but it's going to be a second degree or third degree connection. But that does build the love, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Dave to do business because the last 3 times I went to Dave when he was referring others, man, he came through. And the one time he couldn't, he still expressed sincere appreciation for having been asked. It's right there for all of us. We just frankly, we need to sometimes stop thinking like the traditional business person and just start thinking like a human being.
Yeah. Give first. It's so nice.
Yes.
It's so simple, right? Just give first. Be the first one there, whether you're the one that falls on the sword in communication and you apologize first. You say, what did I do wrong? I mean, there's just so many different things there. And your customers really, in my world and in my experience, customers can't help but love people that are that way. And if they don't love you, then they're probably not even a good fit for you, right? I mean,
we don't have to say yes to everybody who wants to do business with us, do we?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Your point about asking, what did I do wrong? I've worked with a couple of clients. This is not an original idea by any means. It's something that came from a friend of mine who was a business owner long before I was. We talked about customer lifetime value as being a critical equation. Another critical number that businesses, that when they reach a certain point, they should start asking is that net promoter score. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer me to a friend or colleague who would need my services, right? And in this schema, as originally pulled together by the founder of it, the originator of it, 9 and 10 is positive. That's awesome. You've got to show more love there. 7s and 8s are neutral. Anything 6 or lower is a detractor, and you figure out your net promoter score by subtracting your detractors from your positive folks at the 9 and 10. You ignore the 7s and the 8s, and suddenly you've got a number, and you get to work to improve that number. Anybody who gives you a 6 over a particular transaction or over the relationship for the last 6 months since the last time you surveyed, I know chief operating officers who now have a practice of picking up the phone as soon as they see a 6 or less and say, sounds like we've done something wrong. Thank you for your business. Is this something we can fix like right here, right now? And sometimes it is, in which case, what a pleasure. And sometimes it's a more systemic or institutional thing, in which case you get to say, well, thanks for sticking with us. I'm going to do a little digging, and I'm going to keep you part of the conversation as we aim to fix this. And I'll be honest with you, if I can't fix it, I'm going to let you know that maybe you're an outlier in my customer base, and then we'll figure out what to do. Maybe I know someone who can help you with that. It's showing the love. It's asking the question of what can I do to help? It's asking the question of what can I do to get you to love me, which I don't necessarily advise in dating. Here's one where there's things you do in the business world that you don't do in the personal world.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's so funny. We're all consumers too, right? So, you get surveys like crazy now, and which, I love the fact that they're concerned about it. The odd part is, and, pick a huge national chain, don't mention the name, but think of a big, huge fast food restaurant. So you get the receipt, and on there it says, take a brief survey and get a free cheeseburger or whatever, right? So you jump on and you take the survey, and if you said everything was horrible, this was the worst experience ever, I'm never going to go back again, I know for a fact I would never get a call from anybody. Right? So that's, I think, the interesting thing is we as consumers think that, what, they don't love me. They don't care. They just want their ratings or whatever. So what do you do if you are getting some customers that are lower? I mean, like you said, that's a great way to do it, is to call them and to apologize, figure out what's going on. Do you see that happening much, or do you just see the silence on the other end typically?
Well, the world I'm coming out of that I serve most frequently is the business to business world, or the nonprofit world, where you're expected to have more personal relationships with your customers.
Okay, sure.
I've not worked with a fast food restaurant, but I have worked with a couple of organizations that have massive customer bases.
Yeah.
In the case you've just described of a fast food restaurant, or any large scale retail,
Yep.
that's where you get at your answers from a slightly different angle. First of all, you work on culture, and we talked a little bit about the employee culture that strives to make people satisfied.
Right.
But this is why organizations also do things in order to test how well they do, in order to generate customer love, with secret shoppers for one, or you look for the preponderance. When I was a board chair for a nonprofit, I would hear all of the complaints and see the complaints that we occasionally got.
Sure.
And the general rule, which you can't make everybody love you, and as you pointed out, not everybody is a good fit for what we offer.
Sure.
If you're paying attention, if you take the standard normal distribution curve, pay attention to the middle. If something's way off as an outlier on one side or the other, and you rarely hear it, and frankly, if the person doesn't present their problem in a way that convinces you they're a rational, reasonable individual,
right,
the customer is not always right, but we should always strive to make the customer happy.
Sure.
If they are the customer we want to keep. And that's where sometimes you've got to make hard calls.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to see a bucket of if you write down all zeros for my service as a major food chain or whatever, there should be a bucket where all the zeros show up, and you should be able to address them somehow, because if somebody's going to take the time to do a survey and critique you, put zeros, whatever they put, some really low score, and then never hear anything, I think that just adds to the frustration, especially if you're a small business. If you do your own, surveys and you get negative results, like I see on Google, you look at these ads, these, ratings, and you see a 1 and a 1, and nobody ever responds to those.
Yeah. And that's a mistake.
Yeah.
That the person who gives you a 0 on the automated phone survey or the online survey, that's not a great interactive opportunity. But what is, when someone gives you a Yelp rating or a Google rating, or they say something nasty about you on Twitter and use a hashtag, you see a lot of folks in the travel industry, hotels, restaurants, airlines, often they've got someone, and there's whole businesses now built around rapid response, outsourced rapid response to your social media. Because when someone says, I just got booted off of my American Airlines flight, hashtag American, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
There's someone there real quick. And I don't want to hold up American as a unique paragon of virtue here, but I mean, the airlines in general seem to do this well. DM us, let me know what happened, and I'd like to figure out if there's something we can do to support you. And big organizations have vast resources at their disposal, not only people who can respond to these things, but funds, slush funds that they can use for, well, let me give you a $500 voucher, or let me give you an upgrade next time.
Sure.
But we all have something we can give.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for the insight here. I want to ask you a couple things here. I'm going to let you go. What's Bryan Rutberg's tip of the week for everybody listening right now? It could be something we covered, it could be something not, but what's the tip of the week that would really help somebody listening right now?
My core tip is the one that you can take away and do something with immediately. It's tip number 10 in this ebook, Love and Profit: How to Transform Customers into Lustomers.
Okay.
Write a thank you note. Demonstrate appreciation. If you've got people who are responsible for your success, find something. It doesn't even need to be a thank you note. You see they did something or achieved something cool on LinkedIn. Write a handwritten note. It makes you stand out from the crowd. So there's my tip. Write something and send it to someone. Put a stamp on it. They will be blown away by receiving a handwritten note from a vendor or a supplier.
Wow. Think about that. So if you're listening, ask yourself, when's the last time I hand wrote a letter to a client? What a great challenge here. So I would challenge you this week, to do that. When you're done right here, just, put this down and think of the customer, and then find a piece of paper, find a thank you note, whatever it is, and write down thank you for X and send it out. Oh my gosh. Number one, you're going to feel great. You're going to be like, I accomplished something. Number two, they're going to be so excited when they get that. I mean, we all love getting mail, handwritten envelope, don't type it on a computer. Don't, email somebody, but just really handwrite something. That's what a great tip. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, and let us not completely disrespect the handwritten note, the LinkedIn message, the typed note, the LinkedIn message, the quick email. All of those count, and you can do those at scale more easily. You should be doing all of those things. And when you throw in the handwritten note, it just adds a little something extra.
Yeah, that's fun.
Don't not do the other things.
Yeah, no, and I just spoke yesterday at an association event, and I'm going to handwrite a thank you to the association person that hooked me up and connected this all. What a great, thank you so much for that. So,
well, cool. Especially once, I don't know whether that was a paid gig or not, but I know when I get the opportunity to do public speaking and go to a client event, there's always one or two people who have made your life easier as their guest speaker.
Absolutely. Yep.
I've gotten in the habit, especially if there's, let's admit it, it is business, but if there's a check of some nature attached to a speaking opportunity that I get for a client, some of that check goes right back into flowers to say thank you.
Wow.
Thanks. It just, so, it's funny how it's love, isn't it? Right? You bring home flowers for the person in your life that you go home to. Everybody loves flowers on their desk, and how many it just gets comments. Wow, who sent you flowers?
Yeah,
the guy who spoke at our annual conference.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yep.
Anyway,
kudos.
More tips.
Awesome. Cool. So one more question. I'm gonna let you go. This is always a fun question. What is one thing that you feel comfortable sharing with the audience that they probably don't know about you?
Having nothing to do with my professional life, I've managed to be a guest on Dr. Phil.
Oh, what's that?
I actually got caught in a Facebook scam, and unfortunately, one of my Facebook contacts, don't look for me on Facebook because I'm no longer there, but one of my Facebook contacts fell for a scam that used my account as the baseline, sent in money, and it ended up getting into the news. And all of a sudden we got a call from Dr. Phil. So we got a flight to Los Angeles. We got to appear on the Dr. Phil show. We got to talk about how not to fall for scams. So there's my Dr. Phil story.
Oh my
there's
gosh,
something very few people know that about me. And now a few more are going to.
Oh my gosh, Bryan, you're famous. So yeah, so if you want to learn more about Dr. Phil, call Bryan.
Exactly.
Awesome. But no, if you are listening and something resonated with you, I try and say this every week. Don't just, click the stop button. Don't just go on to your next thing. Literally do something. And in this case, he suggested writing a thank you note. The other thing that you can do is to reach out to Bryan and say, hey, I need some help with my customers. I want them to fall more in love with me. And if that's the case, Bryan, what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you in that case?
Yeah. Let me invite you to check out the couple of things we've talked about. There's the ebook, Love and Profit, 10 ways to transform your customers into lustomers, and it'll explain what lustomer means. It's not exactly what you think. Just go to our website, www.3comms.com, and click the link that says, send me your ebook. Excuse me, Dave.
Sure.
If you heard about the roundtable and you think you'd like to jump into the deep end to start because this is something that is meaningful to you, that's where I'd love to have you contact me. My phone number is on the website. The name, as you'll see on the show notes, is Bryan with a Y, and it's Bryan at 3comms.com. Send me a note. Mention the Positive Polarity podcast and just let me know you'd like to have a half-hour conversation. It would be my pleasure and my treat to spend some time hearing about you. And if I've learned about you, then I get the opportunity and the privilege to say, the following things might help. You should think about them. If it leads to a referral, that's great. If it leads to our doing business together, that's great. If it leads to you just now know someone who's going to stay a contact, that's great too.
Awesome. Perfect. Well said. Thank you so much for all this information. Again, if you're listening and you did not take anything away, then I apologize. It's really on you though, because there was a great ton of information. A lot of this doesn't even cost us money. And that's the thing too, is you asking for referrals, writing thank you notes, falling in love with your customer, having your customer fall in love with you. A lot of those things we talked about are not things that you have to invest in other than your time. And I totally get it. If you don't want to invest your time, that's why Bryan's here. I encourage you to reach out to him, find out how 3C Communications can help you with create, communicate, and connect, and then all those others. So we're going to change it to 9 or 8.
A lot of C's.
We're not sure yet. A lot of C's communication.com. We're going to see how that works. But again, please don't just jump into your next activity without either calling Bryan or at least send a thank you to your best customer or somebody that's influenced you in the past week. So if that happens, the world will be a better place and we will all be in a better spot. So thank you again, Bryan, for all your information. Look forward to learning a lot more from you moving forward.
My pleasure. Thank you for sharing your passion on this subject too. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate it.